She was mocked for giving away what little she had, but when the man she helped returned, her life changed in a way no one saw coming. Maria lived in a small, weathered house on the outskirts of town. Every inch of her modest home reflected her frugal lifestyle. A tiny garden with a few vegetables out front, a patched-up roof, and furniture that had seen better days. Yet, despite her meager circumstances, Maria had something that set her apart. A heart so kind and selfless it seemed to overflow with generosity. She wasn't rich by any means, but she believed in giving whatever she could to those in need. The town, however, wasn't so kind to her. Her neighbors often mocked her for what they saw as misplaced priorities. They would sneer, "She barely has enough for herself, yet she's always handing out what little she has," the children whispered behind her back, calling her Crazy Maria, while adults dismissed her as naive. Maria ignored them. She had always believed that kindness was a seed you planted, not for immediate rewards, but because it was the right thing to do. One rainy evening, Maria was coming home from the market when she noticed a young man sitting on the roadside. He was soaked to the bone, shivering and clutching an empty wallet. His clothes were tattered, and his face carried the heavy weight of despair. While others hurried past him, too busy to stop, Maria couldn't just walk away. Without hesitation, she approached him and handed him her own umbrella. "You'll catch a cold like this," she said softly, kneeling down to meet his eyes. Then, reaching into her bag, she pulled out the groceries she had just bought, eggs, bread, and a small pack of tea. "Take these. You need them more than I do." The young man, overwhelmed by her kindness, tried to refuse. "Ma'am, I can't take this from you. It's all you have," he stammered, his voice cracking. Maria simply smiled. "You can always give back to someone else when you're in a better place. Right now, you need it more than I do." She didn't ask his name, nor did she pry into why he was there. She only saw a person in need and did what her heart told her to. Before she left, she handed him the last few coins from her pocket. "It's not much, but maybe you can get yourself something warm to eat." When Maria returned home that night, she found herself met with mocking laughter from her neighbor, Mrs. Cartwright. "Let me guess, you gave away your groceries again," she snorted, leaning against the fence. "Honestly, Maria, you're hopeless. You can't save the world on pennies." Maria just smiled politely and went inside. She didn't bother defending herself. People like Mrs. Cartwright would never understand that to her. Kindness was not about what you had, but about what you gave. The young man Maria had helped, whose name was Daniel, sat under the shelter of the umbrella she had given him. He stared at the food in his lap, tears pooling in his eyes. Her words echoed in his mind. "You can give back to someone else when you're in a better place." What Maria didn't know was that Daniel wasn't just some random stranger. He had a past and a story that would soon intertwine with hers in a way that no one, not even Maria, could have anticipated. The morning after the storm, Maria went about her day as usual, unaware that her small act of kindness had set something powerful in motion. She continued with her chores, tending to her small garden and stitching up old clothes to make them last a little longer. Life had always been simple for her, and she found contentment in her routine, even if others laughed at her for it. Meanwhile, Daniel, the young man Maria had helped, found himself at a crossroads. Holding the umbrella she'd given him, he sat in a small park, reflecting on her generosity. For months, he had struggled to survive after a series of bad decisions, and unfortunate events had left him homeless and alone. That night, Maria's kindness had been more than a warm meal. It had been a reminder that he still mattered, even when the world seemed to have forgotten him. Daniel decided that it was time to pick himself up. Using the coins Maria had given him, he managed to buy a meal and clean himself up at a nearby shelter. He then found temporary work as a handyman in the town square. Every step forward was hard, but Maria's words kept him going. She had believed in him when no one else had. Back in the neighborhood, Maria's generosity continued to be the talk of the town. Mrs. Cartwright, ever the gossip, was more critical than ever. "Did you hear about Maria? She gave her last coins to some beggar," she told another neighbor. "She'll never learn. You can't fix the world with scraps." Others shook their heads in agreement. To them, Maria's actions were foolish, even irresponsible. But Maria didn't care. She wasn't seeking approval from anyone. She simply did what she felt was right. What no one knew was that Daniel was working tirelessly to rebuild his life, driven by the kindness of a stranger who had expected nothing in return. Over the next few weeks, he saved enough money to buy a decent set of clothes and began applying for jobs. His determination paid off when he landed a position as an assistant at a construction firm. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a fresh start. One day, Daniel returned to the spot where he had met Maria, hoping to find her. He wanted to thank her for changing his life and tell her that her generosity had been the spark he needed to turn things around. But Maria was nowhere to be seen. Instead, Daniel asked around the neighborhood, describing her to anyone who would listen. Most people dismissed him, saying, "Oh, that's just Maria. She's always giving things away." Others warned him not to waste his time. "She's not expecting anything back. She probably wouldn't even remember you." But Daniel was determined. He knew that Maria deserved to hear how her kindness had transformed his life. He wasn't just grateful. He wanted to give something back to her, something that could show her the impact she had made. Meanwhile, Maria went about her life as she always did, unaware that Daniel was searching for her. But her days were growing harder. Her aging house needed repairs she couldn't afford, and her health was beginning to decline. Yet she never complained. To her, life was about doing the best you could with what you had, no matter how little that was. Little did Maria know, the stranger she had helped on that rainy night was closer than ever, ready to repay her kindness in a way she could never have imagined. Weeks turned into months, but Daniel never stopped searching for Maria. He felt a deep sense of gratitude that went beyond words. Finally, after asking around tirelessly, he found someone who gave him a small lead. "Maria? Oh, she lives on the edge of town near the old railway tracks. You'll recognize her house. It's the one that looks like it's about to fall over." Daniel set off immediately. When he reached her house, he was struck by its condition. The roof was sagging, the paint was peeling, and the garden, though lovingly tended, was clearly struggling against the odds. It was a home that mirrored its owner, resilient but weathered by time and hardship. Maria was surprised when she opened her door to see Daniel standing there, looking healthier and more confident than she remembered. At first, she didn't recognize him. "Do I know you, young man?" she asked cautiously. "It's me, Maria. You helped me one rainy night a few months ago. You gave me food, coins, and hope when I had nothing." Maria's face softened as recognition dawned. "Ah, yes, I remember. The world looked like it had beaten you down." "It had," Daniel admitted. "But you lifted me up. You didn't just give me food, you gave me my dignity back. I've been working hard ever since, and I came here to thank you." Maria smiled warmly, but she waved her hand dismissively. "There's no need for thanks, Daniel. I just did what anyone should do." But Daniel wasn't satisfied with just expressing his gratitude. He looked around at her house and realized how much help Maria herself needed. "You gave me everything you could when you didn't have much yourself. Now it's my turn to give back." Before Maria could protest, Daniel began putting his plan into motion. Over the next few weeks, he used his growing network to gather support. He reached out to his employer, explaining Maria's situation, and managed to secure donations of materials and labor. He even contacted local charities and neighbors to pitch in. At first, Maria was reluctant to accept help. She had always been proud of her ability to make do with little, but Daniel's sincerity and determination eventually won her over. One sunny morning, Maria woke up to the sound of hammers and saws. She stepped outside to find her yard bustling with activity. Builders were fixing her roof, painters were restoring her walls, and gardeners were planting fresh flowers in her front yard. Daniel stood in the middle of it all, directing everyone with a sense of purpose that brought tears to Maria's eyes. When the work was done, Maria's home was unrecognizable. It was no longer a crumbling structure, but a warm, inviting place that reflected the kindness she had shown to others. Daniel also set up a small fund for her future, ensuring that she wouldn't have to worry about money again. As the neighbors saw what was happening, their opinions of Maria began to change. The woman they had once laughed at was now a symbol of compassion and generosity. They realized how wrong they had been to mock her for giving so much when she had so little. On the day of the big reveal, Daniel stood with Maria in front of her newly restored home. "You gave me a second chance at life, Maria. This is just my way of saying thank you." Maria, tears streaming down her face, hugged him tightly. "You've done more than enough, Daniel, but I hope you know that your success is the real reward for me." The neighbors gathered to watch the moment, many of them inspired by what they had witnessed. It was a powerful reminder that even small acts of kindness could create ripples that change lives. And so, Maria's life took a brighter turn, all because she had chosen to give selflessly. In the end, the gift she had given Daniel came back to her in ways she could never have imagined, a testament to the idea that true generosity always finds its way home.